Good evening. Right, and it's different features, right? So how any kind of the network, if you wanted to manage, right, so and then there are a different kind of the protocols are there, and they have some their features, right? So we will talk about more into this particular concept, right? But before that, we will see what we have covered in our last session, right? So we have discussed different services within our modular network. That hierarchical network we have seen, and with the help of that hierarchical network, we have formed our enterprise modular network, right? And within that there are different services with the help of Sona architecture, Cisco's service oriented network architecture. We have seen in at infrastructure layer. After infrastructure layer, there is one underlying internet layers is there, right? And in that we have and different infrastructure layer security services are there, right? And on the top of this particular infrastructure services, we have some network services as well, which we are embedded on this particular infrastructure services. Okay, so these different kind of services we have seen: storage service, compute service, security service, and application layer services, and all that things, right? And then in network services also monitoring services, then IP multicasting services, and all that things we have seen. Okay, then after that we have also discussed different security services in our modular network designing. Then what are the different external threats, right? Like IP spoofing is there, then DOS attack is there, then password attacks is there, right? And all that things, right? And how we are going to able to see all these external threat in our enterprise network, right? How it affects, and or whether where in at location it takes place, right? That also we have seen in our last session, right? After that we also discuss the high availability services, right? In order to provide any kind of the network, you need to give the high availability, right? So how you can give, you need to provide the root redundancy, you need to provide the link redundancies, you need to provide the device redundancy, port redundancies, right? All that kind of the redundancy you need to give, and after that only the network can be reliable, and this network can be gives you an high availability, right? Then we have also seen the different voice services, right? In VoIP, IP telephony, all that things. Then wireless services we have seen, their application networking services in modular network. In terms of WAN, wide area network, we have also discussed, right? So the all these concepts are with related to your services within a modular networks we have discussed. So today we will start with this our network management of this different protocols, right? So first of all we will see network management architecture, right? There are different components under this particular architecture, that also we will see. And after that we will start with the protocols and the different standards, right? Which are under this particular network management, right? So we will start with the SNMP and the MIP, right? So these two protocols we will cover today. So because the SNMP is having three versions, right? SNMP V1 version 1, version 2 V2, version 3 V3, right? This is nothing but a simple network management protocol, right? As well as this particular MIB is nothing but management information basis. So it is also having two different versions, MIB1 and MIB2. And if you are using any organization's private MIBs, then we can also implement that which will be depending upon different vendors, right? So here also we have talked about some private vendors, that is Cisco. So Cisco's MIB also we will discuss, right? So these two protocols and this one architecture we will discuss in today's lecture, and in the next lecture we will see this RMON, NetFlow, CDP, and syslog, all that things, right? So let's start with the today's session. So first of all we will see how this particular network management can be important or can be a critical component for any kind of the network, right? Because if you see any network administrator, right, who are going to manage all the network infrastructure, right, they needs to monitor all the functionality of your internet networking devices, right, all the cables, routers, switches, right, how the performance of all these internet networking devices, right? So the network administrator needs to monitor all these things, right, whatever is connected within that particular networks, right, and what are whatever the different services which are providing that particular network, that also needs to be monitor, right? And who is monitoring all these things? Obviously the network admin is going to administrate all these things, right? So for that purpose there are some protocols are derived, right? For example, if you see the SNMP is there, then RMON is there, right? Then MIB is there, management information basis, right? So these are nothing but the some of the protocols, right? So so we will see one by one. So before that we will start with this particular architecture, right? So this particular network management architecture, if you see in this particular diagram also, right, so this particular network infrastructure is nothing but the network management system, for example, right? We can call it as NMS, right? Network management system is nothing but your NMS, right? So here if you see a system which can be execute a different networking applications, right? And that particular networking applications you need to monitor, right? You need to control this all these whatever the devices is shown in this particular figure, right? Switches, end devices, monitors, routers, right? All these things you need to manage, right? So this particular NMS, that is the network management system, will be provide you the bulk of the processing and memory resources, right, in order to use this particular, in order to manage this particular network, right? So who is going to provide all the resources? And the NMS is you going to use provide you all the resources, right? And using by which you need to monitor all this. So the for that purpose the network management protocols can be used, right, which will be useful you to monitor all these internet networking components and all that things, right? Because it will be we can use the information which NMS is gives, right, and it will be manage all the devices, right? So there are different protocols, as I told in contents as well, right? The SNMP is there, then MIB is there, then RMON is there, right, likewise. Okay, and then the managed device. So what do you mean by managed device? This is nothing but the devices, internet networking devices, which is managed by this particular NMS, right? We can call it as an managed device, right? Then next concept is your next component is your management agent, right? So these agents are nothing but we can call it as a different softwares you can use, or a managed device you can use, right, which will be collects and which will be collects as well as which will be stores this particular management information, right? So in that you can also include that SNMP agents or RMON agents, right? So SNMP agencies and RMON agents are also a part of this particular management agents, right? So with the help of that we can collect and store the all the management related information, right? So that's why we can call it as an your management agent, right? And last one is nothing but your the management information. So what do you mean by this particular management information, right? So it is nothing but we can call it as some of the data, right, which can be which we can call it as is a which will be interest to a device management, right? And which can be stored in the your MIB, right? So that management information basis, in that we are storing this particular management information, right? So this is nothing but the device data, right, which will be helpful for managing all this part, right? So that's why we can call it as your management information. Okay, so so this particular management application, right, also we can manage, right? For example, if you see in this particular diagram also, right, there are a different internet networking devices are connected with each others, right? And all these things we are managing by using some of the different protocols, that is SNMP, MIB, RMON, right? And this can be uh, this can be handled by this particular network admin in on their console, that is network management, by using some network management applications, right? So this is nothing but your some network management system, what we can call it as, right? Then we will see the SNMP, right, the simple network management protocol, right? Then this is if you see in this particular diagram also, right? So it is, SNMP is nothing but what we can call as a standard for your network management protocol, right? So in this particular part, right, we can have there are different components as well, right? If you see the first component is your nothing but the manager, right? And this manager is nothing but a network management in this particular, that NMS what we have covered just now, right? The NMS which can be polls this particular SNMP agents, right? And which will be resides in the managed device, right? So it will be enabling all the information, right? Whatever it is, information that MIB gives, right, it will be displayed using that particular GUI, right, on this particular NMS system, right? And if you see then there is some different SNMP protocols will be used for exchanging the messages, right? So the messages are exchanging between this particular manager and from this particular agents, right? Which we can call it as a management agents, right? So these particular protocols will be useful for your only message exchanges, right? So it can be uses your UDP, right? That is your connectionless protocol, right? To send and receive the message, right? It's just like your MIB variables, right? So whenever you are what we can collecting any kind of the information, right, so that you need to store in your MIB variables, right? So in this particular protocol also used, right? And then these are nothing but your two managed devices, right? So managed devices is nothing but which can be managed by your manager, right? So that's why it is for example, if you consider the router, right, so it will the devices which can be managed by this particular manager in your NMS, right? That is the network management system, right? Then these are the management agents, right? The inner block we can call it as a management agent, right, who will be resides in a managed device, right? Who will be resides in this particular managed device, right? And what the task it will be it will doing, so it will doing to collecting and store all the range of the information, right, which will be collecting and storing all the kind of the information with respect to all the internet networking devices, right? And as well as their operations, right? So as well as their operation into this particular MIB block, right? And what MIB block is doing, it will be that whatever the management agent is collecting data, right, it will be stores in this particular MIB, right? So it will be having some database of the object, right, about that particular all the devices. Okay, so it will be storing the MIB variables, right? And the MIB variables having all this kind of the information, right? So this is your SNMP, we can that is for the management of this particular information exchange we can use, right? And if you see the different versions of SNMP, we are seeing the SNMP version 1, version 2, and as well as version 3, right? So any kind of the network management protocols, right, if you define it in the RFC, right? So what do you mean by RFC, right? So RFC having some standard documentation, right, in which all the networking related protocols, networking related internet networking devices, then information, then MIBs, right, all with respect to they are set some values, right, over each and every internet networking we can call it as terminologies, right? For example, for SNMP, if we consider this particular SNMP version 1, it will be defined in RFC 1157, right? So if you go in that particular RFC document from on 1157, so you will get all the information with respect to this particular SNMP, right? So you can, if you search on Google also, right, RFC 1157, so you will get all information with respect to your SNMP within that particular document, right? So you can try at your level as well. Okay, so if you see in this particular diagram, right, so we have the manager, right, as well as some managed devices, which is nothing but your, we can call it as management agents, right? So there is a communication in between this particular manager and this particular management devices, right? So there are some different terminologies if you see in this particular diagram also, right? So first is your the get request, right? So it will be used by this particular manager, right, to request a specific MIB variable from this particular management agent, right? For example, the MIB, you know, now the MIB which collects all the information with respect to your internet networking devices and their operations, right? So if manager wants to check for any kind of the related information, right, so it will be first of all request to this particular management agent that I want so and so specific MIB's variable information I want to check, right? So it will be request to this particular management agent first, right? Then again, if you see in this particular second terminology, get next request, right? So it will be used again by the manager when the first request is goes to this particular managed device, right? So it will be retrieve the next object instance from that particular list of the MIBs, right? Then the third one is set request, right? So it will be used for to set a MIB variable on and that particular agent. For example, this particular managed agent having a number of MIB variables over there, right? Because each and every MIB is with respect to the different internet networking devices and different operations, right? So whatever the information wanted by this particular manager in the get next request, right, so that particular MIB variable can be set by that particular agent over here, right? And after that you will get the get response from that particular managed agent to this particular manager, right? So in this get response also it will be used by the agent to respond to manager's get request, right? So managed devices will be responding to each to any of this particular get request or get next request, right, to the manager. Okay, and after that if you see in the last terminology is nothing but that trap, right? That is nothing but it will be used by this particular managed agent, right, to transmit an unsolicited alarm, right, to this particular manager. Why? Because a trap message is sent when specific condition can occur at managed agent side, right? For example, if that particular agent is initialized or that particular agent is restarting, or for example any device or any component or any state of the device can change or having some failure in it, right, then that particular trap message will be transmitted to from this particular network agent management agent to this particular manager. Okay, so these are the some different message types over in SNMP V1 if you considered, right? And when you move from SNMP V1 to V1, if you see in SNMP V2 only it can be revised your first SNMP version 1, right, and it will be more focuses on your the performance of your all these message types, right? So it will be mainly focused on to manager communication, right? So if you see in this particular SNMP also, so only they are adding to more message types into this SNMP V2, right? So whatever the SNMP V1, if you are seeing this get request, get next request, set request, get response request, and then this trap message, right? So all these message types are there in SNMP V2, right? and after that they are adding two more message types into this particular SNMP v2, right? So first one is your get bulk message type, right? So it will be used for retrieving large amount of data, right? For example, tables, right? Because it will be reduces all the repetitive requests and replies, therefore it will be improving the performance, right? For example, if you consider in this SNMP v1, right, the manager sending this particular get request to this particular managed agent, right? Again next get next request for the same variable they are sending, right? Then now this request and the response, right, this will be sending and receiving, sending and receiving, sending and receiving, right? So more time will be used, right? The more processing and all that things will be used, right? So to avoid that, we are using just get bulk message type over here. So whatever the request that manager wants to do to that particular management agent, right, so we can send it in a bulk, right? So so and we will again takes a replies also in a bulk, right? So it will be improve our performance as well, right? So this get bulk message type will be included in this SNMP version 2, right? And the next one is your inform request, right? So it will be useful for your SNMP manager of a specific condition, right? For example, if any failure occurs, right, then we seen that in SNMP v1 the trap message will be sent from the managed device to this particular manager, right? So what happened in this particular inform request, right, the this particular NMS, that is network management system, acknowledge the receipt of message by sending a response message back to the managed device, right? So that particular trap message will also get a replies from that particular manager in this particular SNMP v2, right? If you consider, right, so there are no any we can call security features in this if you consider this SNMP v1, SNMP v2, right? So these are only a capacity of the read only, right? So we for that purpose we are creating this particular SNMP v3, that is version 3, right, which having a security aspect as well, right? So it having a three mainly security aspects, right? So if you see in this particular table, right, whatever I have told you about these RFC numbers, right, if you Google also you will find some details about it, right? For example, 3410 on RFC, there are some introduction and about this particular internet standard management framework, right? If you consider this 3411, right, then some architecture which will be related to this SNMP will be there, right? So these are nothing but some standard document, okay, which will be proposed by this SNMP version 3, right, and some having some of the these RFC numbers which having some SNMP related version 3 related information with this particular RFC number on that particular standard document, right? So it having three security levels, right? The first one, if you see, no auth, no private, means what? No authentication as well as no privacy in this particular security level, right? So without authentication and without privacy or without any encryption, you can use this for that you can use this no auth, no privilege security level. Then if you auth but no privacy, right, that means with authentication but no privacy in this particular security level, right? So you can use some hash based message authentication or message digest 5, then HMAC, CMAC, secure hash algorithm, whatever you have studied in last semester also, right, in CNS, right? So that also is a part of this particular SNMP version 3 with auth no privacy security levels, right? And the last security levels is your auth and privacy both, right? So with authentication as well as with privacy, right? So here you can use that DES, right? So that is data encryption standard algorithm, right? That also you have studied. So that can be a part of this authentication privacy in SNMP version 3 part, right? Then This is all about your SNMP3 version, SNMP V1, V2 and V3, right? So V1 having some message types, right? So all these message types are there in a V2, but additional to that, two more: get bulk message type and inform request, right? And there are no security features in V1 and V2 as well. So there are some three security levels are there in SNMP V3, right? With addition to that, no auth, no priv, auth, no priv, and authentication as well as privacy, right? So these three security levels are incorporated in this SNMP version 3. Okay, then we will start about this MIB, right? So message information basis, right? Which will be having unique identifier, right? So whatever the network management application you are using, right, it will be used for the identifying and retrieving the value of that particular specific object which having these our MIBs, right? So MIB is nothing but our tree like structure, right, in which different similar objects can be grouped under the same branch of that particular MIB tree, right? If you see, for example, RFC 1213, if you see, right, RFC, I'm repeating, RFC 1213, right, it will be give you a MIBs for your network management of TCP/IP, right? TCP/IP internets, right? So it will be, if you see, if you Google it again, RFC 1213, right? So it will be give you all information with respect to your TCP/IP based internet MIBs, right? So MIBs also two types, right? MIB1 and MIB2, right? So basically in MIB2, that TCP/IP MIB will be there, right? In that there, right? And if you see, for example, any private institution or private organization, right, they can be have some private managed MIBs, right, or managed objects are there, right? So we can call it as, you know, private MIBs, right? Or you can for example, the here I'm giving one example of Cisco's MIB, right? So they are having their own standard and private managed objects, right? So that's why they having some more functionality, they are having some more terminology they are setting by their own, right? If you consider in this particular MIBs, right, one second, yes, in this particular MIB also, right? So here one is for ISO, one is for org, then 3 is for org, then dot for 6, internet for 1, management for 2, MIB for 1, right? So it having, these are nothing but your object identifiers, right? So these iso.org.dod.internet.management.mib, we can call it as 13612, 1 2, and this for MIB is for your 1, right? So all the interface related information you will get in your 2 identifier 2, right? So in identifier 2 you will get all the related information with respect to this particular MIBs, right? So we can have some groups, right? So for example, this if you see identifier ISO also having 1, internet also having 1, MIB also having 1, if entry is also having 1, right? So these 1 is nothing but in under the only one identifier, right? And these 2 management is for 2, if table is for 2, right? So these are nothing but under the name of identifier 2, right? So likewise we have some tree like structure. Okay, so each and every object is having a different identifier is there, right? So on the basis of that you can identify whether it will be MIB1, whether it will be MIB2, and all that things, right? And if your MIB is private one, right? For example, this one, this MIB is nothing but your Cisco's MIB, right? So it will having some different subtree, right? For example, 1.3.6.1.4.1.9, right? So it will be also having iso.org.dot.internet.private.enterprise.cisco, right? Like that. Okay, so each one having a different object notation into that particular subtrees, right? So this is nothing but your the Cisco's MIB. Okay, and if you see this particular example, right, so in this this particular manager is there, then this particular manager managed device is there, whatever we have seen in SNMP diagram as well, right? So now whatever the network manager who wants to retrieve what are the different number of errors, okay, on that particular first interface, for example, right? So they need to start the interface numbering from 0 to end, right? Whatever is the number of ports are there, right? Up to that they want they need to check the interface, right? Then then this particular manager required to send this particular SNMP request to these particular managed devices, right? And this particular variable it will be sending here, that is object identifier, it is 1.3.6.1.2.1 20.0, right? So it will be representing the interface is outgoing errors on for interface 0, right? That 20.0 is 0 is nothing but your the outgoing errors for that particular interface, right? So that agent, this particular managed agent can be creates the SNMP get response message in that particular response, right, and to the manager's request. Okay, then that particular response include the value of reference variable, right? Then it will be again back sending back to the value that is 11, which will be nothing but your the error name, right? The where the error is exactly, right? So at port number 11 the errors will be there, right? So it will be again sending back to SNMP get response to this particular manager, right? So this is one sample communication in between the manager and the managed device with respect to these MIBs, object identifier, right? So MIB1 and MIB2, if you see this particular object identifier is useful for communication in between the manager as well as in this particular managed device, right? So so this is all about today, right? So we have checked here what we mean by this NMS, right? Yes, the network management architecture we have checked. We have seen the SNMP, simple network management protocol. There are 3 versions. What are the differences in between all these 3, right? Their message types and their communication. Then MIB1, MIB2, and then private MIBs, Cisco's MIB, and then their object identifier and their communication in between these object identifiers, how it can be take place, right? So all these things we have seen today. So that's it for the day. We will stop today. In next lecture we will have this RMON and CDP and syslog, all that things, right? So there is one test, right? So ma'am will send a link in a group, in a chat box, right? So thank you for joining. We will stop today.